Happy Sunday. Welcome to Car Crash's Instagram Live. My name is Alex and today we've got a really exciting workshop about playwriting with Bea. So this workshop is part of our virtually Fringe festival. Usually Car Crash goes to the Edinburgh Fringe every single year, and obviously like many theatre companies around, they can't. So yeah, this is part of that festival. And we are looking to raise some money. If you want to learn how to donate to Car Crash Productions so we can continue creating work in the future, check out our Instagram and there'll be more information about that. Hey, we've got some people joining now. Hello, everyone. Oh, the music's gone. That's sad. Just bopping by myself. So, as you're all arriving, let me tell you a little bit about what the workshop is today. So I'm going to be interviewing Bea. Hello, Colby. I'm going to be interviewing Bea, Beatrice Hyde, just a little bit about who she is. She's a British and Greek playwright and actor. She studied drama and theatre at the University of Kent and then did a year abroad at the University of California in Berkeley, which basically reminds me of the film The Kissing Booth, which is a great feel-good film, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, and then Bea took playwriting classes, and over the course of her degree, she developed a script, Emmeline, which follows the life of the inspirational leader of the suffragette movement, Emmeline Pankhurst. At the end of her final year, Bea directed the play as part of Kent's Summer Arts Festival. She then went on to train at East 15 Acting School on the MA Acting course, which is where she met me. I did not do the acting, I did theatre directing. But as well as meeting me, she also created the theatre company 7 Art Productions with some other people, who I'm sure she'll talk about in great detail. They devised a play exploring male mental health that they performed at the Camden Fringe Festival last summer. And they're now taking this production on a community outreach project going into schools and prisons in collaborations with the Samaritans charity. Amazing, but not only that, Bea also co-wrote a comedic double-act play called The Quarter Life Crisis, which she'll be performing at the Brighton Fringe Festival. So she's got lots of experience in playwriting, looking glam, thank you Colby, and I'm so excited to get her on. So Bea, if you're ready and you want to join us and you could tell everyone about the workshop we're going to be doing today, let me just click this button. Let me know if you're having any problems with sound or being able to see me. I don't know what you can see. I can only see what I can see. Oh, here she is. Hello, Bea.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Loving the floral colours.
Thank you. I was feeling it today, although I must admit I am getting a bit warm, so maybe it wasn't like the best of ideas, but there we are.
It's crazy.
You look lovely.
Thank you.
So what are we going to be doing today, Bea? What journey are you taking us on?
Taking you on the journey of playwriting. Looking at, basically, I thought if anyone has any questions, you can just post them in the comments.
A little comment. Absolutely.
About different experiences, like firstly with playwriting of this play that I wrote called Emmeline, which is about the suffragette movement, and that was a piece that I've written like a solo writing project that is now going to be put on at the Cockpit Theatre by Theatre Lab Company.
Amazing.
It was going to be actually last July, last month, but COVID happened, but it's rescheduled for next May. So it will happen eventually, just more time to
more time to develop it, right?
Exactly. And then talking also about the company that we formed at East 15 on the MA Acting course called 7 Art Productions, and our play that we made called In Limbo about male mental health that we performed at the Camden Fringe Festival last summer, and now taking on community outreach project. And then also Quarter Life Crisis, a double act play that I wrote with another friend from East 15 that we've been working with, someone who was on the directing course with you actually, Kay.
No way. Oh, Kay.
Directing it for our
so exciting. That's amazing.
Now postponed to next year, but yeah, lots to look forward to still.
Absolutely, it all sounds so exciting. So if anyone's got any questions watching about Bea as an actor, as a playwright, as working in a theatre company, then please you can comment, or there's like a little question mark, and I shall make sure there's time to look at that. So I guess my first question to you, Bea, is how did it all start? How did you begin playwriting?
So initially I've always just been pursuing acting. So I went to arts ed for my like secondary and sixth form. It's like a performing arts school, so we were always doing like vocational classes alongside our academic classes. And then I went on initially to do like a drama and theatre degree at Kent. While quite a lot of people from my course were doing were like trying to audition for drama school straight away, I sort of wanted to broaden my horizons and explore like all the different facets of theatre making sort of outside of acting as well. So I wanted to try out playwriting and directing and kind of all the different elements of it and learn more about the history and stuff. And in my second year at Kent, I did a theatre and adaptation module, which was looking at like how you adapt different sources into a theatre production. I was looking at different options in the big university library, and I came across the autobiography of Emmeline Pankhurst called My Own Story. And I found it was really fascinating, and I've always been interested in writing about feminism. And so I initially just like conceived the idea through this module of looking at how I could adapt this autobiography into a play. And just really actually like enjoyed the process of it. And then I wasn't really planning to like fully write the script, because for the module we just had to come up with the idea of it all and the concept. But then when I did my study abroad year at Berkeley in California, I did like a playwriting module there. And for that module, you had to give like an example of your writing. And so I submitted like 3 scenes from that play that I'd written just to sort of get into the class. And then I was planning to just start working on different things, but the playwriting tutor there was saying, no, I think this has potential, this like the suffragette one, I think you should continue to work on it. So I have him to thank in a way for me to keep going with that and to actually continue writing it. And so yeah, it started there, and I just I kept developing it throughout that year. And after the module had finished, he said, I want you to actually finish writing this play, and so I'll like personally kind of mentor you.
That's amazing.
For the rest of the year to finish writing it. And that really helped, because I genuinely find it so hard to motivate myself to write if I don't have any deadline or I don't have anyone checking up on me. I feel like I'll just then procrastinate it.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Other things, like I don't need to do this now, whereas like having him being like, okay, I'm setting you the aim, like finish this by the end of the time where you're in California, I sort of like, it pushed me to keep working on it.
Yeah, it must be really nice to have someone always validate your work and say, no, actually you should continue with this because it's really good, rather than you being like, oh, I'm not sure if it's got potential. So I imagine that was really comforting
I feel
for
like
you.
with the writing process, I'm always in, you know, there's always that self-doubt, and is it, you know, you have those moments where you're like, oh, is it even worth it? Why, you know, should I keep going? But I think, yeah, having that outside source really helps. And like, if anyone's writing, I'd really recommend trying to find someone that you really trust, who you can kind of send it forward and back to. Not too often, but whenever you have a new draft, to be able to get some feedback and have someone who's like kind of pressing you in a way, like someone who's sort of been giving you some deadlines.
You want someone that's honest as well. So maybe not just your best friend, but someone who's actually going to be like, I'm not sure this is that good, you know?
Exactly, like someone who you can trust to be honest, not just your friend, someone who has some experience in that field as well. Like he is a playwright himself. And also when I went to East 15, I had Ed Harris come in and give like a playwriting workshop, and he's he's won awards for his playwriting. He's done quite a lot of like radio plays for the BBC, and I actually just approached him and I said, you know, I'm working on this play, I would love to like get some feedback from you. And he was really up for that, and I've actually been working with him since for quite a while. So it's been really good to have someone like him who's happy to give some feedback and to sort of like work more consistently, because I find that if you're constantly sending it to different people, they're all going to have
different opinions.
And it can just get quite confusing. So it kind of helps to have like a kind of consistent person who's sort of like always going to like have their heads screwed on the same sort of way,
Yeah.
help you progress it.
So what is Emmeline about then? So they're about being suffragettes. Is it, have you followed like a truthful story, or have you added a bit of fiction into it?
So it is based on initially based on the autobiography of Emmeline Pankhurst. But then I kind of expanded it when I did more research into like reading about all of the family within the Pankhurst. So like her daughter Sylvia as well, and it explores all the dynamics of the Pankhurst family, because I found dynamics actually and conflicts within the family really reflected all of the divisions within the movement at the time. Because even though there were many women within the suffragette movement who were united to fight for the vote, they actually had a lot of differences of opinions in terms of whether or not they should adopt like militant tactics, like in terms of like violence against property, or have more of a pacifist approach, and also to do with how inclusive the movement was to working class women, or whether it was like becoming quite elitist, and there was quite a generational divide in that, and the divisions between Emmeline Pankhurst and Sylvia Pankhurst, her daughter, sort of reflected those like wider divisions that were going on in the movement at the time. So it uses this family's story as a way of exploring the movement as a whole, and hopefully raising like questions and debates that are relevant today around like divisions within the feminist movement, and also in movements in general, to do with like, say even now, like the coverage of a lot of protests really focuses on the violence and whether or not that is necessary or good, or whether it helps the cause or hinders the cause. And sort of I try not to push it one way or the other in the play. I'm not trying to argue for one thing, but I'm trying to open up those discussions and debates through the story of what happened.
Absolutely. So you got your stimulus, you knew you wanted to write about the autobiography and adapt that, but what was the process of that? Did you try and form a narrative in the autobiography? Did you want to take original pieces of phrasing, or did you just completely just start with your own words? Oh, we've lost a bit of connection there. Oh, or maybe it's me, I'm not sure. Oh, there you are.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
We lost you for a moment there. No, it's okay. I don't know if you caught that question, but I just wanted to know basically how you began on adapting the autobiography.
So initially it was all just reading it over quite a few times, letting it sort of wash over me, get the sense of the feeling of it. And then I remember writing like a timeline of all of those kind of key events and things that I wanted to include. And it's difficult because there's so much that happened, and it's hard, you can't cover it all, so I had to be quite selective of like the main points that I wanted to really get across. And the play is definitely like really developed and changed a lot as the process has gone on, because initially I think I maybe tried to cover too much of it all, and then with some of the feedback that I'd got, it was like, this is really interesting, but it's almost like too much information, and you have to kind of really focus on the personal. And so I think that is what draws in people in terms of as theatre watchers, you want to empathise with the characters and those personal stories, and that's why I wanted to focus on that family as a way of bringing in all the wider issues without overloading all the information about the history. And I want it to be engaging and fun as well, but I've included a lot of poetry that was written at the time, and sort of the authentic suffragette songs, and I intended it to be quite a physical theatre kind of piece, so that they could be, in terms of like showing the protests, I wanted it to be sort of immersive, and to really incorporate all the audience in it. Like when I directed it for this Summer Arts Festival at my university, I sort of had the actors using the aisles, handing out leaflets to the audience, to sort of get them involved, get them singing the chants, to sort of create the atmosphere of what it would be like to be in a movement. And that's why I think I thought that it's important to have a play about this rather than just people reading about it in an educational way, because there's something about the feeling that I wanted to get, like that essence of like the passion, excitement of like being part of a movement, something that feels like bigger than you.
Yeah.
And how like to kind of inspire people of like social change is possible. Like it's not that long ago that women didn't even have the vote, and it's like these women who you wouldn't expect at times were so much more restrictive then to be coming out onto the streets protesting, and I go into sort of the horrors of it as well in terms of like the police brutality at the time and being taken into prisons, and then the horrible tactics that were used of like force feeding these suffragettes. And how even after being force fed they would be released from prison and then do it again and be put back in, and they just wouldn't give up, and they were sacrificing their whole families. They would be like left by their husbands very often, and they sort of like this idea that you have to put this above everything in your whole life. And so I want it to be inspiring of like how that change is possible, but it's complicated and it's difficult because there are so many different strategies and approaches and clashes within it. Like I don't know if anyone watching has been seeing that BBC series Mrs. America.
No, I've been wanting to watch that actually.
Yeah, I'd really recommend it, and it's interesting because it looks at like divisions within the feminist movement in America, specifically around like the Equal Rights Amendment. And you'd kind of assume like all women would be in favor of an equal rights amendment that basically means you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. But
Tamara's seen it.
Yeah, basically there's a whole group of women who are actually like fighting against this amendment coming through because they feel like it goes against the institution of marriage and against homemakers, or that women fear that they could be drafted into the army. And so it's quite complex, and it's not always the case that it's just as simple as like all women are on one side sort of fighting together.
And it's interesting because even though that it feels like it happened years ago, as you said, it wasn't actually that long ago, and the themes are still happening today. People are still having to fight for change. And I imagine all those feelings that the suffragettes were having back then, a lot of people in the Black Lives Matter movement or protesting for climate change, they're still the same feelings of being passionate and not knowing what the change will be, but knowing that they have to fight for it, which is quite scary, really, is going against this society and like, you know, fighting.
I'll say with Black Lives Matter that even, you know, in the midst of the pandemic, it's like this is so important that people to risk going into potentially like dangerous situation where they could pick up the virus, because this felt so
it's more important than just them.
People are willing to take risks and make sacrifices for like this greater cause that they've obviously have years of oppression behind them, just like women have, and it's something that kind of just goes beyond all of the current circumstances.
Absolutely. So you said you were an actor as well. Like I feel so excited about this project, and I really want to watch it, but I almost want to be in it as well. Has there ever been a moment where you've like, I just kind of want to be in this as well as writing and directing it?
Kind of. It's a weird one because I do think it would be a fun show to be part of, but I almost feel like I'm too much like on the outside and have my head like in the world of like creating that play, and then, you know, I was actually talking with the director who's putting it on now for a theatre lab company, and she was asking me whether like I would want to be involved or not, like as an actor or more as like a writing consultant. And we both agreed actually that it would be better for me to be sort of like with her on the outside, like looking at the ideas of it all. But I definitely like
maybe in the future
have had moments where I'm like, that would be fun, like, you know, because it's very collaborative. I imagine it to be, you know, with all of the cast like forming together like strong bonds to create all of the physical sequences. And it was interesting when I was like directing a version of it that I almost like encountered the difficulties that I'd like laid out for myself through the writing, sort of like thinking, oh wow, that's quite a quick costume change, or like, oh, that's quite a difficult one to like get across. And so kind of it was a good learning experience in terms of writing to then have to direct it, to realize have that in mind as well.
Did you ever, when you were directing it, did you end up changing the script at all because of things that you discovered as a director?
Yeah, so that was kind of nice to have a bit of that freedom. I didn't want to change it too much because I felt like it wasn't fair on the actors to keep making changes when they've like learnt their lines and stuff. But I would make certain adaptations, or I'd be quite open to them if they felt like a certain line wasn't sitting right with them. If they wanted to say, okay, can I just say it a bit like this? Feels more naturally to me. Then I was sort of open to that. And I think that helped, and that the actors could ask me like, what did you mean by this line, or what's the history behind this character, and sort of help them to connect their characters to the real people that they're based on, because I think that is quite a responsibility as an actor to be portraying a real person. And then similarly as a writer, I felt quite a responsibility to really convey the truth and authentically of these real women and all these inspirational figures, all the Pankhurst family, and sometimes I found that hard to balance between like trying to create the best drama that has the most conflict and is going to be the most interesting to watch, but then not straying from the truth of the characters and the truth of what happened. So that was always like a balancing act in it.
Absolutely. So you've got this play finished now. How long did that take you to do? Because it feels like it's been, you know, following you for quite a while.
It has been, actually. So my second year at uni, and then that was about 3.5 years ago.
Just have a moment of panic there as that settles in.
Yeah, it's a long process.
Yeah.
And it definitely went through a lot of changes. For the festival where I directed it, I only had an hour slot, so I had to really cut it down. But then after that point, I wanted to really develop my research and learn a lot more. And then when I learned so many more interesting things that happen in the movement, I then like expanded it and made it loads longer. And then I realized, okay, now this is too long. I have to like strip it back again. So it's just like a constant development process. And even now, I wouldn't say it is finished, but I wouldn't be closed off to having it still like evolve throughout the rehearsal process, say. But I am planning to send it to publishers, and that was a point where I felt like now I have to have a version of it that I feel like this is the play now, like, because I'm sending it off, and if it's printed, that's sort of like those are the words that would be printed, and that was quite hard in a way, because it's always been in this sort of like process of like evolution to really kind of nail it down to like, okay, what do I want the final version to be?
And once you got that sort of final version, how did it become then professionally developed? So if people are sat at home and they've got a play and they're thinking, well, it's done, but what do I do next with it? What did you do?
So for the version of it that I directed for the summer festival at my university, I invited a director that I'd previously worked with as an actor. So her name's Anastasia Ravi. She's the director of Theatre Lab Company. And when I was younger, I did a theatre tour with her of a Salome play, the Oscar Wilde play. And I just invited her to come and watch the production, not even really necessarily with it in mind, like I hope that then she'll take it up and direct it, but I tried to invite all people within the industry that I knew that could potentially, you know, have some interest in pursuing it. And when she saw it, she really loved it. She came with her daughter, and her daughter's like 14 at the time, and her daughter was saying she never really learned about the suffragette movement in school, and that she was really inspired by watching it. And she, like, through seeing her daughter's reaction, she felt like this is a really important play to put on. And she told me, like, I want this to be the next play that I direct. And so I'd really recommend like reaching out to anyone that you know, like even people that you wouldn't even think could you know, take something on that you've done, or, you know, other actors, like try and arrange, even if it's not a full-on production, but like a reading of the play, like get other actor friends and try and do a reading together, and then maybe invite potential people that you know who are directors. Say, like, you know, even just on our course we met, you know, you were on the directing course, I was on the course, and so anyone that you met through drama school, say,
absolutely,
who was pursuing more directing, or other writers and
Yeah.
or other actors as well, because as we'll talk about later, you don't necessarily have to just get a director to put it on. You could, as an actor as well as a writer, say, be collaboratively put it on with a company and do it that way. So it doesn't always have to just be your one, you're the writer and you need to get a director. We can all be kind of jacks of many trades, as it were, and do a bit of everything.
I think that's more realistic as well of what theatre making is when you begin anyway. Obviously for the West End shows it works very differently, but all the experiences I've had, it has been a collaborative thing where you're not just expected to be one role, you're expected to be a director and make set and costume and choreograph. And I think it's really exciting to be able to dabble in those different fields as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is. It's exciting to try out all the different factors in terms of making a production. Like, say, with our company 7 Arc Productions that we formed at East 15, we all took on like more production roles in terms of, like, I was doing all of the admin, say, like we had to make a company email to communicate with the venue that we were using for the Camden Fringe, and then communicate with the Samaritans charity that we were working with. And so there's actually quite a lot of admin involved in that, and contracts and things. And then we had one of our company members who was doing more in terms of like fundraising. And she was working on an Indiegogo campaign that we were using, and then creating a budget of like how we were going to spend all of that, all of the money that we managed to raise. And then we had someone who was more involved in like the social media marketing side of it. So there's quite a lot of different
roles that you managed to delegate to people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good way of doing it. We've actually got a question here before it goes off my page. This is by Tom. And he says, how long does the writing process often take for you? And at which point do you say, okay, I'm committing to this being my final draft? So we sort of spoke about that a little bit, but if you want to elaborate a bit more.
Yeah, so I think it does depend on the project. Like, often, say, if you have a deadline where you're taking it to a Fringe festival, say, and that it has to be ready by that point, then you can really use that deadline as a means of thinking, okay, by that point it does need to be finished. And say with our production in Limbo that we did with 7 Arc Productions, we only had like a month turnaround between when we initially like created our company at the end of East 15 and when we were having to take the production to the Tristan Bates sort of like at the end of July. And so we just had a really intensive month's rehearsal process of development. And we used that. So, or say like what I was saying about my play Emmeline, when the playwriting tutor I was working with said, okay, by the end of the year I want you to finish it. I think it's those kind of external deadlines that can really help. But I do always think that, say, even after that point, it's good to still be open to improving it and to working on it, especially as a new playwright, and kind of keeping things developing. So like even after our Camden Fringe production within Limbo, we then went on to do like a second R&D development process with another director when we were going to be taking it into schools and prisons, because we wanted to adapt it to be more relatable for them, more like go further into the character's journey with mental health. And so I think when if you have the time and resources, it is good to use the feedback that you get from initial performances, say scratch nights that you can do, then try and get some feedback and then keep working on it, because you often don't really know how it's going to go until you try getting up on its feet. When it's just words on a page on a laptop, I think it can get quite dry. It's just, I also stop being able to notice things that are wrong, and you just need to hear it aloud. You need to sort of see it live.
And the audience's reaction, like sometimes you expect them to laugh at a certain bit and then they decide to laugh at another bit that you didn't expect, and you're like, oh, okay, not sure I wanted that laugh there.
And much from that, like what people get from it, because sometimes there's certain elements that you're not sure if it's going to come across clearly, and really trying to get honest feedback from people who are not just going to say, oh, it's great. It's like, but really hearing what worked for them, what they wanted to see more of, and then be willing to kind of keep going with it. I think it's one of those things where you really have to have a project that you care about a lot to drive you through the process, because it is long and it is difficult. But I think that once you have something that really that fires you and that you really want to talk about and that you really want to get out there, that's what's going to make it possible for you to kind of like push through. So I think it's good not to just pick something for the sake of, I want to write something, I'm just going to start writing, but really like make sure it's something that will keep you going, because it is a difficult process and it can go on
persevering. I've actually got a question here from Luke that says, how do you get your scripts published? I don't know if you've had experience with that.
So sending it to publishers, it really helps if you have a production of it lined up. So I wasn't able to send it over to publishers until I had a production of it sort of scheduled at the Cockpit with Theatre Lab, because they basically like for you to be able to publish it and then have somewhere that you're planning to sell it. So if you sell it at the theatre during the opening, then they kind of see that that's a potential for them to be able to sell copies. So I think that initially it is like trying to work on getting a production of it put on somewhere, but also you can self-publish as well. If you want to get some printed copies to be able to sell yourself or publicize yourself, and then potentially after that, after it's got a bit more exposure, then you can send it on. Like the main ones are, say, like Nick Hearn, Samuel French, or Oberon Books would be like the main three publishers for playwriting that you go to. But yeah, that would be the main advice about like publishing, but it's not the be all and end all to begin with. I think that it's sort of like slightly further down the line.
Yeah. And you spoke a little bit about the company you formed in East 15, Seven Arch, is that correct?
Seven Arc Productions.
Seven Arc, sorry. So how was that formed?
So for our final project for our MA acting course, it wasn't like most courses where you do a dissertation. We had a creative project, which is called an MAP, like an MA project. And what we had to do there was devise, form like small theatre companies within the whole course, and then devise a piece of theatre, which was really broad. It was like, it can be anything that you want. So we
but that was a bit daunting.
Yeah, there was a whole process around like finding people who had like similar passions and interests and things that they share, and all of us in the company had some like family or some personal experience that really like meant that we had a drive to open up dialogues around like mental health, especially like male mental health and male suicide. And that was what really drove us through it. And initially there was actually 7 of us in the company, and that's where the 7 in the 7 Arc came from. But then as we took it past East 15, past that final project, there was 4 of us who were really passionate about like staying in the company and continuing it, taking it on to Tristan Bates as part of the Camden Fringe Festival. So it was us 4 that continued working together after that, and then we got in a director who one of us in the company had worked with previously, Georgie, and then she helped us from an outside eye kind of like redevelop this idea. It actually completely changed from what it was for our final East 15 project, because there were 7 of us before, and then before we explored, each of the 7 of us had a different story. But then we found that through the feedback that we got from the production, it was sort of too many stories to follow, and so we decided we really wanted to focus on one protagonist story. And so Sean in our cast was the protagonist. He ended up actually being the only male in the group, and obviously wanted to explore male suicide. And so we explored his story, James's story, and then I played his sister. Another of our actors, Kat, played his girlfriend, and then Anna in our company played like a guide that he meets in Limbo, which is like the in-between space between when he's attempted to take his life and when he like eventually she kind of helps him on a journey of like rediscovering his will to live in a way, and like revisiting kind of flashbacks and key moments in his life that led him to this point. And she sort of helps him to confront his past and look at what led him here, and then help him to like rediscover that like will to live again. And we wanted to make it sort of something more hopeful, and the message being about communication, and like the fact that he's able to open up to her and he's able to speak his say how he was feeling really helps him, whereas like he sees that in his life, in all these memories, he was closing down and bottling things up, and that was what was leading to his downfall, because he wasn't able to communicate that. And also the people in his life wanted to help but weren't actually helping in the best way possible, because they were, say, doing things like putting pressure on him to get a job and to do something, or to try doing yoga, try doing counseling, try doing this. Like that's what my character was like. It's sort of an example of like, think you're being helpful, but actually it can be worse, or to the detriment of someone's mental health, to put too much pressure on them. And I think that through working with the Samaritans, that really helped us to figure out like the right kind of listening that we wanted to be like promoting. And they have like a model they call active listening, which is all about asking open questions, not leading questions, not giving advice, even though that's such a natural instinct to want to give advice, but to really just let them speak, give silence, like help them to just come to their own conclusions. You can't tell someone what to do, but they have to come to it themselves. So I'd say if you're ever working on a project which is exploring like a sensitive topic, or something that you feel not fully equipped to handle in the right way, then like reach out to a charity, reach out to.
Is that what you did? Did you just email the Samaritans and pitch your idea to them?
Yeah, we did, and then they arranged a phone call with us, and we then through the phone call told them more about our play and what we wanted to do with it, and they actually said they'd be really interested in collaborating with us on this, and they think that it's really important to use methods like theatre to get this message across. And they actually came and gave like a post-show Q&A at our Camden Fringe Festival, and there were Samaritan representatives at every performance who had collection buckets, and they managed to raise over £700 throughout our run. And then they were the ones that initiated the idea of like, you could do this as a community outreach project, because they have connections and partnerships with different schools and prisons, and sometimes they'll just go and give a presentation or a talk, but they said that they think it's really valuable to have like a theatre piece that can really engage people and students and the inmates in different ways. And often I think that sometimes it's harder to reach the people that you want to reach through the theatre, because it's a certain demographic of people who are going to London theatres, and there's all kinds of like economic and social barriers that will stop potentially like more vulnerable people who you want to get this message to from actually being able to hear it. So I think just actually taking a production to those places is the way to really reach those people.
So going back a bit to playwriting, so obviously this production with Seven Arc is devising. Was there ever a moment where your experience as a playwright helped with that process, or maybe hindered in some way, and how did you cope with that?
I think it definitely did help. What the method that we used in terms of like the writing and devising was that we had a timeline for the protagonist James's life, and then we would pick points on the timeline. And so we'd see like what age is he, and what's the place, what's the setting, the location and the time, and then we'd do an improvisation in character of that scene, like whatever it was, whatever point in his life it is, and we'd record the improvisation, and then afterwards we'd transcribe it. So we'd type up the recording, and then we would go through it and edit it down, because often with improvisations things can be repeated quite a lot, or it's just bigger than it needs to be. But the good thing with improvisations we found was that the dialogue felt really natural, because it was what actually came to us in the moment, and there was potential like overlapping of lines, or someone not quite being able to say what they were intending to say, or not know how to articulate what they want to say, and that is more real in a way. And sometimes I think when I was writing on my own, I would tend to write the sentences maybe too perfectly, or the lines too perfectly, in a way that the real people wouldn't necessarily talk. So I think that was a good learning experience for me as a writer, to think more in terms of like when we're improvising, finding natural speech patterns. And what I brought with me is from my writing experience, I think, was all about really stripping it back as much as possible and focusing on the subtext, which is more interesting. I remember my playwriting tutor gave me the advice: you always want to arrive late and leave early to a scene. So you want to start the scene when things are already happening, and leave when things are still going on and there's a cliffhanger, and you want to see the next scene. And so that's what really drives it, and not having any exposition, not trying to overly explaining things that people just wouldn't say in the situation, because if everyone in the room knows something, they're not just going to state it. So it's like knowing how to like leave, what to take away, and not be too precious about it, but really like focusing on subtext.
Has that changed the way you watch theatre now, or TV or film? Do you ever watch a scene and like really analyze how it was written?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm always kind of in my like analytical brain watching like theatre and films, and sometimes I have to try and actively like turn that off to just sort of enjoy watching it and not get too caught up in analysing it. But I think that it is it's interesting to see. I think of it from the actor's point of view, and then from the writers, and I imagine like the process that it would have been through, and also the director's point of view. And I would recommend anyone who is an actor or who is a writer to try getting experience in both, and with directing as I think it can be mystifying on either end if you've never acted to be writing, or never written to act or direct. I think
you can make a lot of presumptions, I think. Like, I think going into directing after I've been an actor, I understand what it's like to feel vulnerable and what it's like to not understand. And that's why when I'm directing, I try and always encourage actors to ask questions, because I've been in that position where I just don't know. And I think it's similar, probably the other way around as well. Now, when I go back into acting, I think I'm a little bit more understanding and probably a bit more empathetic towards the director and try and support them a little bit more and bring ideas.
You realise that when I was directing, I realised you are thinking of so many things, and it's not all about the actors. You're communicating with the designers and with the tech team and with all the crew, and you're thinking of like the whole thing. Whereas like with the actors, they can just focus on their part. But then as a director, it's important to understand that for actors, you are making yourself vulnerable, and things are difficult. People have their own processes. And what I learned, I think, as a director was like understanding that each actor is going to be unique in their process, and that you can't treat everyone in the same way and expect that whatever works for one actor is going to work for another. So certain things are going to work more for different people, and you have to be sensitive to that.
Absolutely. So you had this piece in Limbo, and then you performed it at was it the Camden Festival?
Yeah, the Camden Fringe Festival. So we performed it at the Tristan Bates Theatre.
Yeah. And did you get funding for that production?
So the turnaround time was actually so tight that we didn't have time to apply for Arts Council funding for that one, but we did an Indiegogo fundraising campaign, which was actually really successful. And
how did you go about doing that? I feel like lots of people might need that advice right now.
Yeah, definitely recommend it. I mean, it's a difficult time at the moment when things are uncertain and people's finances are not probably in the best state. But I think like Indiegogo really helped. We made a video where we had all short interviews with each of us about what this project meant to us, and we included the Samaritans in our video as well. And I think that if there is links to a charity, it can help, because it feels more like something that people want to donate to, something that's going towards a social cause or a charitable cause as well. And reaching out to family and friends also to just try and get certain spaces in kind, or try and get like use the resources you can. Like say our company member Sean, he lives in a guardianship bank. So like it was like an old bank, and now it has like a huge kind of hallway area, and we've used that to rehearse quite a lot. And that really helped. And so because rehearsal spaces can be so expensive, or we use the East 15 rehearsal spaces whenever we could. So it's like trying to find those ways that you can minimize the costs as much as possible, as well as like trying to fundraise too.
And then you went on to do some outreach work in that, and you took it to schools and prisons. And how about did you go doing that? Did you contact the schools and prisons directly, or did you get like a tour manager to run all that?
So it was through the Samaritans that they had these partnerships in the schools and prisons. And so say with the prison that we are going into is Brixton Prison, and the Samaritans run a listening scheme there where they train inmates to become listeners who are basically there to for anyone who's struggling to be able to talk to and have someone to open up to. And what's nice is that they're training inmates to become listeners for others, so that they're not fully reliant on the Samaritans. Then they actually have people who are like within that environment who are there to listen to them and promote that active listening. And they wanted our production to come in, because that is the message of the piece that we want, is like active listening and communication. That they wanted us to come in and perform in their chapel for like 3 different groups of inmates from different wings. And they took us into Brixton quite a few times so that we could see the space, and we could go and actually meet some of the inmates and talk to them and hear their like the things that they're struggling with, the things that they would want to see what kind of reception it would get. And we were actually really overwhelmed with the positive reception it had, and the fact that they all really felt like it was important to bring up a dialogue around mental health, and that a lot of them were actually quite open about talking about their own struggles of depression or anxiety, and the particular like struggles that come with being in incarceration. So definitely really helped like go into that environment.
Well, let's round up a little bit then. So just to end this then, I think this has been so useful, and we will definitely save this and pop it on our Instagram and hopefully YouTube eventually when Wi-Fi permits it, because they just take so long. But just to round up, so do you have any top tips for people that maybe want to go into playwriting or have written things? Is there anything you'd advise for them to do?
I think definitely just main thing is actually just do it, like, because I sometimes have ideas in my head for a long time and then don't end up really getting round to doing it, and just not letting those barriers stop you, thinking like it is possible, you can do it, and there is a way to get it on. Like I didn't know anything, and like never feel like it's not possible. You can research. Reaching out to people I think is so important. Like reach out to people to get feedback, like have someone that you trust to get some regular feedback from. Try and get like collaborate with people, like reach out to other actors, reach out to directors. You might think, oh, industry people, it's often actually the people that it's not people out there in the big world who you feel like, oh, I don't know how to like get in contact with them. It's actually a lot of often people that you've already worked with, people that you already know, who actually can help and who you can collaborate with, and that you can make it happen yourself. Like you don't have to wait for someone else to approve it or want to do it. You can be like, I'm gonna put this on, I'm gonna act in it. You can do a one-woman show, one-man show, and act it, produce it, write it yourself, or find other actors that you want to like devise with. Just maybe try what works for you. See if you prefer writing on your own, or if you prefer a more collaborative process. I think find like spaces that you really enjoy writing in. So like for me, I would get really distracted if I was just writing at home. So going out to a nice cafe, getting a coffee, and then having this as yeah, but now we're wearing a mask. haven't been doing. That's probably why lockdown's been harder. No,
Yeah.
no coffees. Nice like cafe coffees. But yeah, finding like good environments that you enjoy working in, and also just having a break from it as well. Like I think sometimes if you've been working on something for a long time, you just can't think about it straight. You can't see it from a fresh perspective. So often I'll just take like a few weeks or even like a few months off writing something, and then return to it feeling more fresh. But you don't want it to feel just like a chore, like oh, I have to go back and do this. You want to enjoy it. So yeah, finding that thing that really like that fires you up, that you want to say, that keeps you kind of passionate and driven with it.
That's probably the same with giving advice to people that want to start theatre companies as well, isn't it? It's like if you know who you want to work with, just do it, right?
Yeah, actually do it, exactly. And yeah, I think it's so important having a balance of people in a company that really making sure that you do work well together, and that you have someone who's going to be really organized with stuff, and someone else, like you have the same attitude, that you all care equally about it, so that you know everyone's going to put in that effort. Because I think you just don't want to have anyone who doesn't feel as committed, or as long as you're all really committed and you're all going to put your all into it, I think it will make all the difference.
That's fabulous. Just before we end, I don't know about you, Bea, but I've been listening to lots of podcasts in lockdown. But I actually heard through the grapevine that there's a podcast that you've got going live on Monday. If you want to tell us a bit about that. Tomorrow. I don't know what day it is, to be honest.
And it doesn't make much difference anymore. Who knows? So it's a podcast that our company 7 Arc Productions recorded a couple of weeks ago with Thornhill Theatre Space, which is a theatre company that is putting on a virtual theatre festival, a bit like Car Crash Productions, because everyone's sad that the Edinburgh Fringe isn't happening, and so we all want something. This is another like virtual festival, and we recorded a podcast which also has a Samaritans representative speaking on the podcast as well, and the interviewers just asking us about our company and about our whole process of devising in Limbo, working with mental health. We hear more about the community outreach projects that we are doing in schools and prisons, like in more detail. And so if you follow us on Instagram,
how can we listen to that?
So on Instagram, our handle is like 7 Arc Productions.
We'll pop it in a post as well after this as well.
Yeah, we've shared the link to the Facebook page. If you look up Thornhill Theatre Space on Facebook, that's the company they're releasing the podcast tomorrow at 7 p.m. I'll be sharing it as well on my like personal Instagram, which is beatrice.hyde.actor. And so, yeah, if you follow us, you'll see the updates coming through, and that will also be available afterwards if you're not free at 7 tomorrow to watch.
Amazing.
On Spotify.
Pop it on my running playlist. That's fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've just learnt so much. I feel like I want to be a playwright now. I mean, I just don't know. Like, I think what you were saying is about reflecting on how you best create work. And I think I am more of a collaborative person. I think when I was younger, I tried to write scripts, but it was often just mimicking like things around me rather than actually trying to find something original to say. But yeah, I feel very inspired right now, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just trying things out and seeing what works for you. And even if it doesn't work, then at least you've learned through that process. That's just not quite the way I work, but you'll always learn something. So it's just trying things out, making it happen. Collaborate with people.
Just give it a go. And that's great that we've got lots of, well, I mean, time seems to be slipping away. We've got more time than ever, I think, to just try new things. And we can't blame on being too busy, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
So a good thing to go. And if anyone has anything they want to send, yeah, exactly. There's going to be flooded with work, I'm sure. I hope so anyway. And if anyone has things that they've written that want people to look at, they can send it to Car Crash. And if you want, Bea, I can send you things as well if you want to check out what people.
I'd love to like read over things.
Yeah.
If you need someone to give like a fresh pair of eyes, like some sort of objective feedback.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to end this live here now. And everyone enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Goodbye.
you, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.